Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Ouch Girl Show. We have a very, very important show today. September is Suicide Prevention Month, and I have some wonderful guests on today. I have Latesha Higgs from
Hello,
Diva
everyone.
Effect. Am I correct?
Yes,
The
ma'am.
Diva Effect.
Yes.
Okay, from the Diva Effect. And then I also have Dr. Stevens.
Yes.
The whole topic for today's show is strictly regarding suicide prevention. We have stories. We are also today, we're actually taking text, anonymous text, abundance of questions text, and they will all be answered today during this show within this hour. So if you have any questions for any type of text, listen, you text to 240-847-4572. So I'm going to say it again. It's 240-847-4572. Can I ask you something, Dr. Stevens? What if some people, because some people are at church, some people are here and there, but like I say, once this show is on the internet, always on the internet. Mm-hmm. If they text you even afterwards, can they still ask questions, or will you be able to?
Absolutely. I am open to having these questions answered. This is something that is not does not end once the show ends, because I'm big on providing information and having people informed so that we can save one life.
Yes, that's the whole point of the show, please. So any questions that you have, whether it's for yourself, whether it's for someone else, whether you're just curious to see if it's something that needs to be brought up, something that might just anything, because I don't know nothing about it, so I will not be talking that much during this show because I don't want to offend anyone, because I don't know. So I'm just letting them talk because they have a lot of information to share. But just in case there's any questions, or even if, like I say, anything prevention. Mm-hmm. You have one question, even though it might sound stupid, you might feel silly about it, please don't. Ask the question. Mm-hmm. Just ask it. So I'm going to take you to, are you ready, Mama?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm going to take it over to Miss Latesha Higgs because there's a lot of things that she wants to address and talk about as well. All right.
So first I want to say thank you for allowing both of us to present this today, because it is a serious topic that nobody really wants to talk about. This past week was Suicide Prevention Awareness Week, even though we have a month, but we also have a week. And I wanted to share this information and get it out there, because a lot of people don't, like I said, don't really talk about it. So I'm going to start off first with some statistics about suicide. And these are alarming statistics. And once I finish with those statistics, then I'm going to go into the story of my brother's suicide. My brother was 14 when he took his life. So I'm going to talk about that, and as well as how it affected me growing up and how it led to my diagnosis of a mental illness later in 2012. So that's how I'm going to start off.
Okay, baby.
So the first set of statistics come from the National Institute of Mental Health. So in 2016, the National Institute of Mental Health reported that suicide was the 10th leading cause of death overall in the United States. Suicide was the second leading cause of death among individuals between the ages of 10 and 34. There were more than twice as many suicides in the United States as there were homicides. Now, everyone across the country is talking about, we got to stop killing each other, this, that, and the other. But I just reported that, or I just stated that there were twice as many suicides in the United States than homicides, okay? The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention states that for every suicide, 25 other people attempt suicide. Suicide costs the United States $69 billion annually. Yet this is something we don't want to talk about. The CDC reported that more than half of people who died by suicide, 54%, did not have a known mental illness. So a lot of people think when someone takes their life that they suffered from some type of mental illness. And according to the CDC, that's just simply not the case. That's not always the case. All right? Suicide rates have increased in nearly every state. All right? The Washington Post, Chicago Tribune, U.S. News and World Report, National Institutes of Health, American Journal of Managed Care have all reported in 2018, this year, a study that showed, now this is the most alarming for me, suicide rates for black children ages 5 through 12 were roughly 2 times higher than those of white children within the same age group. I'm going to say this again. Suicide rates for black children within the age group 5 through 12 were roughly 2 times higher than those of white children within the same age group. Now, I don't know about you guys, but to me, that's scary.
It's very scary.
That's scary because that's the age group that I also teach. And to know that one of my kids could take their life, you know. And it's scary that it's rising, but yet we don't want to talk about it. You know, we don't want to talk about, even in my brother's story, no one wanted to talk about it. No one wanted to, you know, address the issue, you know, and it had devastating effects, not just on myself and my sister, but later on another relative, a cousin of mine that tried to do the same thing in a different way, but she tried to do the same thing, take her life as well. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with my brother's story. And as I said before, this was something no one wanted to talk about. I am the oldest of 3 children, and my brother who took his life was my only brother. He was 14 years old. We were the first 2 grandchildren of a pastor in Baltimore City. And churches don't want to talk about mental illness, let alone suicide. And I just wanted to, speaking of that, I just want to take the time and pause and just give a shout out to Reverend Callie Fox of Shining Light Ministries, because he loves his congregation so much. And the fact that he trusted me to share my story with his congregation is amazing, because, you know, churches need to talk about this.
Yes.
You know, we need to address the issue. You know, black people, for the most part, that they mostly trust their pastors.
Yes.
For the most part, I
understand.
for the most
Or
part,
the church
but
family.
right, or the church family, and so it needs to be addressed. And the fact that Reverend Callie Fox came to me and asked me if I could share my story with his congregation, that was just a huge blessing, and I'm very thankful that he trusted me to be able to do that. So thank you, Reverend Callie Fox, for that. But my brother and I, we moved out of my mother's home very young. I think I was in 9th grade, and I moved in with my father's parents. That set of parents, my grandfather was the pastor of a church in Baltimore City. And so we stayed there for a while. Everything was okay. And then my brother moved out, I think around about my 10th or 11th grade year. I can't remember, it's so foggy. But my brother moved out. So we kind of lost contact. We didn't stay in contact with each other as much unless I went to visit, you know, my grandparents, my other grandparents that he stayed with. So, you know, we didn't really communicate that much. But one day in February, I decided to give him a call. And we talked for a very long time. It was an amazing conversation. To this day, you know, it was just like I'm still at awe of the conversation we had. And in that conversation, he shared with me his hurt and his pain and his disgust for the different things that was going on. And he told me he wanted to take his life. So growing up in the church, and from what I've heard from other people, the only thing I was able to say to him, well, if you take your life, you're going to hell.
Because that's all you knew.
Because that's all I knew. And I thought it was the right thing to say, and I thought it was the right thing to do, and I tried to offer him comfort in so many different ways, but that was what I thought. Now, mind you, I was 16, you know. So, you know, we eventually got off the phone, and I thought that the conversation ended, you know, we had a promising conversation, you know, that we were going to get our relationship back together, the way, you know, being tight like we were, because we were 2 years apart. And that whole week of school, I had a picture of my brother and I. My whole family loves this picture. It's a picture of my brother and I taking a bath together. You know, when kids are young, parents throw them all in the tub at the same time. So my brother and I were about I was maybe 3, he might have been 1. And we had my parents took that picture. And so I kept that picture in my notebook all week. And I was excited because my brother and I are going to, strengthen our relationship. We're going to be friends again. I'm excited. I talked about him all week. I shared the picture. And then that Friday at school, I kept hearing a small voice, when you get home, call your brother immediately.
Really?
All day.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, okay, I'll do it. I kept hearing it over and over again. But when I got home, I called one of my girlfriends. And we started talking and talking and talking. And I kept hearing that voice, you need to get off the phone and call your brother. Over and over again, call your brother, call your brother, call your brother. So I ignored it, and eventually the voice stopped. And when I realized I stopped hearing that voice, which I now know was the Spirit telling me, you need to call your brother. When I realized that I stopped hearing that voice, I decided to go ahead and get off the phone. Well, when I got off the phone and I called my other set of grandparents to check on my brother, my grandfather got on the line and said, he's in the hospital. I'm like, why? Well, Latesha, he took his life. No, he didn't. He all right. He's fine. I mean, I was in serious denial. I would not believe it. No, he's okay. He'll wake up. Y'all don't know what you're talking about. But then I started to get a little nervous. So I went to my grandfather, my other grandfather that I was staying with. I said, I need you to take me to the hospital. And at first, they didn't want to take me. But I kept saying, no, you're going to take me to the hospital, and I want to go now. So I started, we got in a car, and as I got in the car and as we were driving towards the hospital, a part of me was still like, when I see him, I'm going to fuss him out. Why would you do that? Come on now. We just got back to being friends. You want to do something like this? Didn't I tell you if you take your life, you're going to hell? Why would you do that? So I'm thinking all of this stuff that I'm going to say to him. But on another side, my heart is racing, and my anxiety levels are rising. And I couldn't understand, why am I feeling like this? And I'm shaking. And when I got to the hospital, get on the elevator, part of me still angry, another part of me still denial, another part of me anxiety levels going up. I got on the elevator, go up to, I can't remember what floor, probably the 3rd floor. And when I got off the elevator, I literally looked to my right. And when I looked to my right, my brother's room, the curtain was open. And what I saw was tubes running through my brother's body. And he laid there lifeless. And before you knew it, I lost my balance. And when I got up, I went into his room, and I'm screaming, I'm hollering, I'm praying, God, why are you taking my brother? JR, wake up.
Right.
Wake up, JR. Come on. No. This is no. I bind this in the name of Jesus. No, you're not taking my brother. And I started praying over and over and over, and he still laid there lifeless. And eventually, after praying and crying out to God and fussing with God and fighting with God, I gave up. And I realized he's really gone. So I stayed silent the rest of that day because I was trying to understand what just happened in my own little 16-year-old mind, trying to figure out what just happened. And we went home, and in the back of my mind, I blamed myself. That's when the blame started the next day, because in that conversation I had with my brother, he told me he was going to do that, and he told me why in the anger. So another reason why I stayed quiet is because then family members blaming which side was the reason he took his life. But I knew why.
Okay.
But I would never tell, and to this day I tell people I'm taking that to my grave.
Wow.
But I would just say everybody had a part in that. Everybody had a part in that. They were blaming this person, blaming that person, but everybody had a part in that. But I was so angry with myself that, one, I blamed myself because he told me he was going to do this. I blamed myself because I heard the Spirit say, call your brother. So it was my fault that my brother died. So my sister and I, now mind you, my sister, I'm 16, so my sister was probably around about 8 or 9, I can't remember. And my sister we went through the funeral and everything, you know, went through all of the process. But do you know the entire time not one family member picked up their phone to say, are you okay? And I understand my relatives were trying to figure out what was going on. And I understand during that time, you know, that was a touchy subject that church people didn't want to talk about. And remember, you know, he had my grandfather's name. So he was the first grandson. So nobody wanted to address that. And I got that. I get that. Now I'm older and I get it. But at that time, it was just like nobody called to say, are you okay? So my sister and I grew up never receiving grief counseling. And we managed dealing with my brother's suicide on our own. Now, mind you, both my sister and I, because mental illness runs on our mother's side of the family, we both have a genetic predisposition to mental illness. Did I said it right? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, but for me, my brother's suicide triggered some things. And it lasted for over 2 decades. And so I would say several months after my brother's death, I took my first job. And I shared that story with one of my coworkers.
Okay.
It was a woman, an older woman. And she said to me, point blank, oh, your brother took his life? I said, yeah. You know he in hell, right? So for 2 decades, mind you, not getting any grief counseling, no one coming to me to say, or my sister to say, how are you feeling? What's going on? So for 2 decades, over 2 decades, I carried with me, you're the reason why JR is dead. You're the reason why he's in hell. For 2 decades. Over 2 decades, can you imagine trying to live and push past that and still hear that in the back of your head, and then you're wondering why your relatives still have not reached out to you? Are you okay? For over 2 decades. My sister, she remembers some things of my brother, but it bothers her too that we haven't had anyone to reach out. All we hear is whose fault it is. Now, I know the reason. And I keep saying no, everybody had a hand at this.
Okay.
But it hurts. It hurts because to this day, people still don't want to talk about it. And several years after my brother passed, as I said before, I had another family member, a cousin, that tried to do the same thing. And people still don't want to talk about it. It's like enough is enough. It's time to talk. We don't need another. I don't even know if I have younger cousins now that I don't even know if they knew my brother ever even existed, because I don't know if it's talked about. And it needs to stop being hidden, not just in my family, but families across this country. When I sat there and gave the statistics that children, black children in the age group between 5 and 12 are taking their life at a rate 2 times higher than white children, when are we going to stop lying to ourselves and have these conversations? Yeah. And as I said before, it triggered a lot of things for me growing up, and all into adulthood, hearing that almost every day, especially during the anniversary of his death, especially during his birthday, different family events and this, that, and the other. And I'm realizing my brother will not be here today. And I'm telling myself, and I'm hearing the adversaries, you're the reason why he's dead. You should have answered the phone. You're the reason, you should have called him. You're the reason why he's dead. You should have told somebody. You're the reason why he's in hell. For over 2 decades. Okay, so eventually I said, I can't. This is troubling me too bad, because I never got the help. So I decided to join American Foundation for Suicide Prevention.
Okay.
And I'm telling you, volunteering with them started my healing process. Mm-hmm. Now, it took a while, but it started the process. I still was going through different things. And like I said, I wasn't diagnosed with my disorder, with bipolar disorder, bipolar type 2, until 2012. But by that time, a whole lot of stuff happened. That's like another show in its own.
Okay.
But a whole lot of things happened in between that time. But me volunteering with American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and participating in their Out of the Darkness walk. My sister and I were my sister, my mother, myself, my sister's husband, and my ex-husband, or my husband at that time, we participated in that walk. We did invite other people, but we were the only ones to participate in that walk. And both her and I were pretty disappointed that we didn't get the support that we were looking for. But I have to keep reminding myself, even though I'm on that journey to healing and ready to talk about it, that doesn't mean everybody else is. Mm-hmm. And I have to respect their journey and their willingness to talk. Yep. But that was hard because once I started going through the healing process, I started getting angry with my family. Mm-hmm. I started getting very angry because it's like, why are we hiding? Why are we not talking? You had one person take their life and another person tried. And I really feel like with the things that my different relatives and family have gone through, I really think we are a very strong group of people. I really do. And I really wish that we would just stop hiding behind things and just start being honest and tell our testimonies, because we made it over this side of the story.
Right.
We made it over this side of the story. And making it over that side of the story is going to... God allow us to be able to give a testimony and to help other people. And there's so many people that we can help if we just stop trying to hide it, So that's my brother's story of how he took his life. He actually took his life in the house where I stayed for when I got divorced, I moved back. And he actually took his life in that same house. And every time I walk by that room, I see it. Every time I walk by that room, and then the doctors are still amazed about how he did it. They're like, how is this even possible?
Really?
The way he took his life. And several times I tried as my own. But before I go into my story of how I tried to attempt, I want to
take a break.
Yeah.
All right, so listen, we will be back. We're going to take a quick break because we still have a lot to talk about and to address. Please remember, if you have any questions, you can text. It's a pure anonymous text. We don't know who you are. If you have any questions, please text to the number 240-847-4572. And we'll be right back. All right, baby, that was... Hey everyone, we are back. Welcome back to the Ouch Girl Show. We are talking about suicide prevention, because September being Suicide Prevention Month, but even outside of September, it's still something that needs to be addressed and needs to be talked about. So we have Dr. Stevens up next. She's going to go over the statistics that Ms. Latesha had went over. So she wants to touch on the statistics.
So first, I want to definitely thank you for sharing that story,
yes,
because
thank you, Mama.
that really goes underlooked and talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you brought up a lot of information about the statistics, and I want to go ahead and give some background information of how these numbers have come to be. The first one is that the suicide rate is the leading cause of death overall in the United States. I'm sorry, the 10th leading cause of death overall in the United States. And this also is ranked up there amongst with cancer, amongst heart disease. But suicide at times has been masked in regards to fatalities, murders, car accidents, homicides, things of that nature. So when we really tease out and see what was the actual parts, the moving parts in regards to these incidents, the source is suicide. And we have a lot of murder-suicides that are happening and on the increase over the past 6 years, especially with a lot of the police brutality and the police incidents that's occurring. You're finding a lot of individuals, more so between the ages of 16 to 25, that are willing to act in those forms of fatalities, knowing that they may not come out of it. So when we talk about suicide, we have to look at it in all facets, where it may involve another person. We have, of course, we hear in the news of the homicides that are occurring and the school shootings that are occurring. And those are also combined with murder-suicides, where the victim, the perpetrator ends up taking their life after they have endured or have injured however many victims. So just want to make that aware that the suicidality numbers include all facets of car accidents, car crashes, murder suicides, and also police interactions. Okay. The next one was about the 54% of individuals who do die by suicide have not had a known mental health disorder. Now, this is where can be a catch-22, because depression goes overlooked and unrecognized on so many levels. So I'm not surprised, but then I am surprised this 54% is there, because 54% of the people have not been diagnosed with depression and they have been overlooked. If you're going to work every day, if you're smiling and getting dressed, and if you're able to take care of your kids, you're not depressed. Well, have you asked this person how they're sleeping, how they're concentrating, what their thought process is? Has there been a change or a decrease in pleasurable activities? Those are things that you really want to get to know about a person to ascertain if depression is present within them. So this definitely most likely is accurate. However, the aspects that it takes to diagnose and to see if a mood disorder is present goes a lot beyond than just the physicality of a person and their productivity. And the biggest piece, I know Latesha has shared about the 5 to 12-year-olds with children. That really does break my heart to hear that. However, we need to understand how emotional development is developed with children. And if our children are not feeling secure enough to come to the adults in our lives to help fix the problems that they're feeling internally, which is emotionally, if that's not secure and if that's not presented for or afforded for them, then yeah, I'm not surprised that that is the leading cause between that age group. Latesha and I are well aware what happens at 5 for boys when they are told, to suck it up, what you crying for, go be a man.
Yeah, because that bothers me when I thought about that. I'm sorry, and I didn't want to cut you off when you said it, but
that's the beginning of cutting the emotional lifeline off from a kid. So from 5 to 12, if I don't have a way to release my emotions and I don't know what this is called or who to talk to about how I'm feeling, this definitely is the breeding ground of how depression does set in. Yeah. And with girls is the same way. It's just the external piece of what our girls are looking at instead of what it is that who is being talked to. I grew up looking at people in the magazines and like, oh yeah, if my hair just did that, or if I was just this size. Yes. That is something that really does need to be discussed, because if I'm looking at something and I'm already telling myself I'm not happy with how I look, and I'm going externally to seek that, and nobody in my home or in any adult in my life is correcting me, again, that awareness is cut. And I see how kids resort to this is the only option they have in regards to self-harming.
Yeah, that bothers me. That gets me a little teary-eyed with the 5-year-olds, because it's like, what are you possibly going through? Because I don't know. So what could you possibly be going through, or what can a kid be going through to make them even think that? Like, you're just starting life, like you're just in the beginning stages, like, and that's unfortunate. It's sad.
I think a lot of times people or parents forget that children, even though they're younger, they do have emotions and they do have thoughts. And when children look at a situation, they're looking at it from their lenses, their view of things. So oftentimes their view of things are distorted, you know. So, you know, when children are of divorced parents, and I'm not going to say this happens to everyone, but when children go through a situation in their home when parents are getting divorced, and I often hear, well, their kids, they grow up, they'll be okay. No, they're internalizing that. Or when someone in their family dies and they don't understand what happened, they're internalizing that. And people are forgetting that, yes, children bounce back, or sometimes can be very resilient. That's what you hear a lot. But they're still internalizing in these things. And our children are being exposed to things at an age now that they shouldn't be exposed to. Like, I have students that know about different songs and shows that they should not know about. Why is a 5th grader knowing about Power? You know, things like that. And they're being exposed to things, and they're trying to handle children's situations with adult minds. And they're confused. I mean, and I'm just talking not as a professional. I'm talking about as a teacher, what you see. You know, I had a student a couple of years ago when I taught 2nd grade. I didn't even know his father was murdered until 6 months into the school year, and he's sitting there like this. I'm like, come on, get to work, what you doing? And he just burst out crying. I'm like, oh my God, what happened? And then that's when he told me his father died. And I'm thinking it recently just happened. Right. It happened 6 months ago.
He's internally, he's holding it, and he doesn't have no one to talk to.
So people are forgetting, while you're going through your issues or whatever it is, your child is watching you going through it. They're going through their issues as well. And not only that, they're on social media. Why? There's a reason why Facebook says at a certain age you cannot get on social media. I don't believe any child should have a social media account, you know, but that's just me. But we're exposing our children to way too much, and they're seeing way too much, things that they don't understand. Our frontal lobes are not fully developed until, like, what, 25? And we're allowing children to see things at an age that they shouldn't be seeing. Or,
because there be some videos in there, and I'll be like, how did that get on there? And I'm like, oh my gosh,
Yeah, so I mean, as an educator, especially in Baltimore City, you know, I see a therapist once a week during the school year. And the reason being is because, one, dealing with my own issues, you know, making sure I stay stable, but hearing my students' stories all the time. You know, stories of children homeless, you know, and I'm not just talking about 1 or 2 a year. I'm talking about 5, 6, 7. You know, hearing about a child whose parent is incarcerated or murdered, and just hearing the things that they're going through. And I'm hearing this all day, every day, multiple kids. You know, you just be surprised some of the things that our kids are actually going through these days. And, you know, I hate it when I see parents argue in front of their children. That bothers me as well. You know, because they act out in different ways. And like with boys, and I know you could speak to this, especially with our boys, the way they show depression is through acting out and, through anger and fighting and things like that. And sometimes when we're sitting and looking at our boys, like, why you keep fighting? Why are you just and the other? The child could very well just be depressed or just angry, dealing with things that that they don't know how to handle. And because at a young age, we tell them, suck it up, deal with it. Now they don't have the emotional tools or the words, the words to be able to communicate effectively what is it that they're feeling. So now they're acting it out in ways where I don't have to use words now, I'm gonna use my fist.
Yeah, I see that.
So, but that's just my thought and my take on that. I didn't know if you wanted to add to that.
No, you summed that up very well. And I would add girls as well. Our girls are just as angry as our boys have been known to be. And with that being said, we have to definitely look at number one, what our kids are being exposed to. You nicely capped on that. What it is that they're being exposed to, what it is that they're telling themselves. That's a big piece too. Because little do you know, what they tell themselves is not very nice. And then we need to see who are the adults, or have the adults around them know that. Do you know that your kid is this angry? Do you know that your kid speaks negatively over themselves? That right there supports the option of self-harming.
So I have a question, because like I said, I don't know. So my question is, when you say the parents don't know, with the kids, but wouldn't that go into the parents, how you come to parents that are young and having children at a young age? Does that affect would that be a part of that too? Because sometimes young parents would not know what to do or how to react. Because I was a young parent, so we don't know what to look for. Even with us being young, we wouldn't know how to react to that, because we might just act. I've met parents that act worse than the child.
Yeah, of course. Like Latesha just said, 25, our executive functioning and critical thinking does not fully develop until 25.
Okay.
So if I'm 16 and I've had a kid, what looks right and what feels right is what is my guide.
Yeah.
And if it's wrong and it hurts, I'm not touching it.
Okay.
And that's the extent to a teenager's mind frame. If it looks good, feels good, I'm sticking with it. Okay. If it doesn't and it hurts and it takes away from my personal pleasure, I'm not rocking with it. And so that's the frame those are the boundaries that some teenage mothers have. Not saying all. But as a counselor, educator, this is something that I always bring up with people when we do workshops, when we talk to family members. I mean, sometimes my family does not like to see me come, because I want to know, are you all having these conversations?
Because you coming in there to shut it down, you putting people around
I'm
glass.
letting,
Look.
Who hasn't looked at Cousin Johnny and said something about how isolated he is? Who hasn't said something about Cousin Tammy about how hopeless she is talking? Let's pull these people in instead of separating them and putting them in corners and saying, oh, they'll be all right. But no, let's go in and have these conversations. And that is a difficult thing to do, because it is difficult. People there's some trepidation of having a conversation about self-harming. And it's like, well, if you're fearful of saying it and asking it, then that's, you need to say it and ask it.
I was, to speak on what you just asked, I was a young mother as well, very young. And, a lot of the things that I'm sharing is not just because I'm on my soapbox, but I had to learn these things as well on my own. And but one thing I did learn, I made sure that I kept, because I knew what I went through growing up, not feeling like I had someone to talk to. I made sure my doors were open for my son and my daughter.
That's right.
I made sure that door was open for those two. And I'm still, and I'm hoping that my goddaughter, she's my goddaughter, I have legal guardianship of her, and I'm hoping that she sees this and know that I'm still here for her, and I want her to reach out to me. I want her to reach out to me. She can still call me. After divorce, I haven't really, been able to keep and communicate with her And I do miss her. My son's, looking for her as well. But I tried to keep that door open with my children. And I'm telling you, when I share with my friends some of the things my son and I talk about, they're all like, what? But I want my son to come and talk to me. And he knows if I don't have the answer, I'm not going to lie. I don't know. I don't have the answer. But I can try to find someone that will help you in that process. But yeah, it is a learning process. And, as a young mother, I had to figure that out as well. But I did know I did not want the same thing for my son. I wanted my son to be able, when I gave birth to him at 18, I wanted him to know that he could come to me and talk to me about anything. And just to piggyback on something you said earlier, Dr. Stevens and I, I go throughout Baltimore City giving different presentations about mental health and suicide prevention and things like that, dealing with mental health as a Christian, as a the oldest grandchild of a prominent pastor. Now he's passed away in Baltimore City. So I always give my presentations on that because, like I said, a lot of churches don't want to talk about it, but I'm going to talk about it. And so one of the things, and I bring Dr. Stevens with me because when I first started doing those presentations, women were coming up to me. I remember my first one was with, no, not my first one, one of my first, the biggest one, when I had a large audience, was at Towson University to a group of women. It's a large audience. And at the end of the presentation, I had so many women coming to me with questions and telling me about their stories. And although my presentations, I will always post, I am not a licensed therapist, that, if you need help, this is where you can, they would still come to me. So I started asking Dr. Stevens because, one, when I launched my my nonprofit, she came to the launch party, and that's how we met. And so I asked her to come with me because I couldn't answer these questions, and I didn't want to guide someone in the right direction, in the wrong direction. And so one of our the first presentation we did together, she said to the audience, instead of just asking people how you're feeling, what did you say?
How's your heart?
Oh, really?
I started using that, and woo, people get stuck. They're like,
wait, because I'm like,
so I didn't know.
Because and when you ask how you feel, how are you feeling, or how you doing? Oh, I'm all right, and you keep it moving.
That's the usual.
Yeah, and if we really want to see the essence of how someone is doing, well, how's your heart? Because number one, you have to think about it.
You sure do, because I thought, I was just like, well,
and number two, if you really are true to yourself, you say, well, today I'm feeling overwhelmed. Okay, well, is there one thing that we can do to reduce it? Those are the conversations that need to happen outside of the therapy room. That happens in the therapy room all the time. And actually, my clients, they love that I ask that. And then when I forget to ask, well, you ain't asked me how my heart was. So
I like that.
With that being said, this is how we're going to know what people are actually managing.
Wow. I really like that. What we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break because I know you want to come back and talk and about your situation.
Oh, okay.
You okay with that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick break. Also, don't forget the number to call, to text. Sorry, text.
240-847-4572.
Anonymous text. Any questions that you have, Dr. Stevens got your back.
Yes, I do.
All right, we'll be right back. Okay, so we are back. This is amazing to me because this is a lot of good information that needs to be talked about. We're back at the Outro Show. We're talking about suicide prevention. Any questions that need to be asked, you can text us at 240-847-4572. So now I'm going to turn it over again to Miss Latesha Higgs because she want to talk about some more things, and then we're going to sign off with websites or places that you can reach out to if you have any more questions or things that you need to talk about regarding suicide and suicide prevention. Okay.
So we talked about earlier. I talked about how this kind of with my brother's suicide, you know, in the back of my mind and not getting that help. And I remember during the first break, there was one cousin that reached out to me, and she's an older cousin, so I would call her aunt. You know how you got those older cousins? So I called her Aunt Pinky, and Aunt Pinky reached out to me to make sure that I was okay. And I do remember that Aunt Pinky did.
Shout out all your family members.
She reached out to me to make sure that I was okay.
Nice.
So I want to give a shout out to her for
Shout
that.
out Aunt Pinky.
Shout out Aunt Pinky.
But and every now and then, you know, as I was growing up, she would, you know, and she checks on me on Facebook every now and then as well. But so I dealt with that for over 2 decades, and as well as some other issues that were going on, you know, because life doesn't stop; it keeps going. Once it, sometimes, what's that saying? When it rains, it pours.
Yes.
And for 2 decades, it seemed like it was, you know, pouring. But I was that person where on the outside, it looks like I was fine. You know, everything was okay. I graduated from Boys State with a 3.8. You know, I'm getting things done. I'm getting married. This and the other.
Smiling and all that.
Exactly. You know, just
and if someone would have asked you how your heart was.
Oh, I'm good. Oh, you say a heart. I'm sorry. If they ask me how I was doing, I'm good. If they ask me how my heart, why?
Yes. Right.
Why are you asking that? I'm all right. And then I would probably go back to them and be like, you know, I'm not feeling pretty good.
See? Yeah, because I like that question.
Yes, I love it. I love it. But so I was diagnosed because I actually tried to take my life. My ex-husband caught me.
Wow.
And I was trying to do it the same way my brother did. I didn't even realize I was trying to do it the same way my brother did. When I tell you, he literally pushed me from the where I was standing and about to he pushed me from that onto the bed, and he saved my life. And I was angry with him at first for making me go to the hospital, and then that was the first time I was hospitalized. And then that's when I was diagnosed. And like I said, that they're dealing with the mental health part. That is definitely another show. But so I dealt with that off and on for many years. So from 2012 to I think about 2014, maybe. I think about 2014, maybe 15. I dealt with going through that healing process. Yeah. And that was a very, extremely dark time for me. I didn't recognize who I was. I didn't recognize a whole lot of stuff. So I attempted suicide many times. You know, I don't know if my dad is watching, but Dad, I promise you I will not do that again. Because I'm his only biological child left, and he always checks on me, and I want him to know I'm okay now. But that took a lot, you know, to go through. And like I said, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention started the process. And what helped me stay on that process, I became a speaker, an official presenter for NAMI, meaning I am an official in our own voice presenter for NAMI. Okay. So when I go out and give my presentations, you know, outside of my own personal speaking engagements, when I go and give my presentations for NAMI on behalf for NAMI about my lived experience dealing with a mood disorder, I also talk about the suicide and things like that and how it led to me having this diagnosis. But being that presenter, I began to talk about the story more, and the more I talked about it, the more I began to get healed. and the more I was going through the recovery process, and the more I began to, I stopped being ashamed of what I dealt with and what I was going through, because I actually even had dealing with this mood disorder, and all the other issues. I actually had like a huge, I guess you could say, break in school doing a job that had a big issue as well. But I began to go through the process, and it really helped me a lot. And I found that the more I talked about it, the less ashamed I was, and the more I was adamant about fighting the stigma against it. You know, so I definitely can say American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and NAMI really helped me in my process and saved my life. Another resource is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-TALK, TALK. For my birthday, my 40th birthday this year, woo! The end of this month on Facebook, I'm raising funds for. If you follow me on Facebook, you'll see that I'm raising funds for Lifeline. Yay. And for my my actual birthday, on my birthday, I am doing the Out of the Darkness Suicide Prevention Walk in Havre de Grace, Maryland. So I'm still looking for people to be on my team. I'm hoping that some of my Facebook followers or friends and family would step up and join the team, or at least donate to support a worthy cause. So I've done the Out of the Darkness Suicide Prevention Walks before. My sister and I organized the team one year. She organized the team one year. She's in Texas now, and I miss her so much, so I'm hoping she come up for that. But I was saying my story, I said all of that stuff about going through the process because that's what it was. And I still have to go through the process. So now, although I don't want to take my life, because I think about my son, because my son always tell me, Mommy, I want to know, I wish I knew what my uncle was like. You know, and you guys seen the picture of my son who looks like an older version of my brother. Yeah. And my students, I've gotten so close to my students over the years, and I actually have one student on Facebook now. I love her. I love her dearly. She's doing wonderful. She's a student in one of the colleges in North Carolina, and I think about her as well, and all of my students, but her as well. If I did this, and I know how much she looks up to me, like what, and just the other people that
it affects other people.
Yes, and I've read somewhere that said suicide does not stop the pain; it stops it from getting better, and it makes it worse because even if you take your life, there's other people around you. It's like a ripple effect, you know what I mean? And like I said, I went through this process for over 2 decades, and this year, so my story, I would say, continues with, this year I dealt with an emotional and mental abusive, I guess, type relationship, emotional and mentally abusive type relationship or situation where we were dating, let me put it this way. And I didn't recognize that I was in that, because you can get into that so subtly, and I didn't recognize that. So I was dealing with that, along with dealing some issues what I was dealing with at home, and dealing with issues on a job, and I really felt like I didn't have any escape. I'm going one place to the next, to the next. And so for the first 6 months of this year, if someone had asked me, how was your heart, I would have been like, but people were, how you doing? And I'm giving these presentations, I'm fine, everything's going well, the diva effect is hitting off, things are going well. But what people didn't know, for the first 6 months of this year, it was very difficult, and at one point I slept with a razor by my bed. Because I was cutting myself. And one day I just decided, no, I'm not going to let this get the best of me anymore. And I just, I don't know what it was, but I share that story because this is not, you may be fine today, but you don't know what life is going to throw at you later. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm glad I had these resources, because I started going back to these resources again, because I thought I was fine now because I was participating in these different events and I was doing well. I'm in my recovery. I'm telling people I'm in my recovery, and then all of a sudden it's like life happens again, you know. And so, but that was the reason why I wanted to share that, to tell people, you know, these are the resources. You don't know what's coming on down the pike, but I thank God every day I wake up that He gave me the wisdom to know where to go to get the help, and that He just blessed me to be able to see another year, and I'm just in awe of what God is doing right now. So I can't leave right now because He's still showing off.
Oh, I know. He got things to do.
He's still showing off in my life.
Because you got things to do and people to touch and educate. That's why. Thank you, Mama. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm gonna let you do whatever, because I know your stuff you wanna.
Yeah. So lastly, I just want to put out some warning signs people can definitely look for with individuals. If you have an individual who has become increasingly isolated, I know a lot of our teenagers spend a lot of time in their room. That should be ample opportunity to go in and say, hey, what is it? What are you doing in here? Just so that you can lay eyes on what's in the room or what's going on with this person. Does not have to always be a teenager. It can be an adult as well. If you've noticed that there's some change in odd behaviors, and this is for any person in a home that has medications. If you notice that there's bottles of medication that has been full one day and now it's missing the next, you may want to look and see, okay, who is stockpiling medications in the home. If you are looking at adults nowadays that are questioning or wanting to buy a weapon, that is another a red flag that you would definitely want to know what's the purpose behind it outside of safety reasons. What is leading to this decision? And then if you notice people, the big one, people really overlook this, is the giving away of things. You know, we all clean out our closets. I know I do, twice a year. All clean out my closets, and I give a nice chunk of stuff away. But that's just my stuff, not my memorables. And when you find people giving away memorables that you know that these items mean a lot to them, you definitely want to, that's a red flag, and inquire what's going on, what is your plan, what is happening right now. And the whole aspect of when a person does self-harm and die by suicide, that it does have a ripple effect to those in the family, friends, co-workers, community. A lot of times the theme of selfishness comes up, that, oh, this person was selfish and that's why they took their life. Well, actually, that was their way of stopping the pain. No other resource was available to them to stop the pain. Just like you say, they just want the pain to stop.
Okay.
And so that's how we have to change our mindset on that, and because I think that's a big piece of what supports us not talking about suicide, is because it's been linked with, oh, you're selfish if you do that.
Wow. Okay.
And Dr. Stevens, you can find me at hopefulcounseling.org.
Is that's it?
Yeah,
Dr.
that's
Stevens
it.
Or you can text her at 240 call.
Yes, 240-847-4572. And my website is hopefulcounseling.org.
And then you want
to... so I'm trying to do better on Twitter now. So you can reach me on Twitter at Higgs Latesha, Higgs Latesha. Or you can just find me on Facebook at Latesha Higgs. And then if you're trying to find our nonprofit, The Diva Effect, you can find us on Instagram at The Diva Effect, or on Facebook at Unlock the Diva.
All right. So that's what we're going to sign off. Thank you so much. You all have a prosperous and productive day and week and all that good stuff.
Yes.
Thank you.
And thank you so much. And I thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, y'all. We signing off. Bye-bye.
Bye.